Welcome everybody. Appreciate everyone being on the call. I actually don't know what number read through this is, so I probably should stop trying to introduce that. But we are picking up today where we left off last at section 123.8, distributor operations. We'll probably fly through distributor today and then hopefully get through a chunk of retail, maybe most of retail today as well. A lot of layers here. So again, this is the proposed regs read through that's presented and supported by CANY, the Cannabis Association of New York, and the Rochester Public Library. Our belief is that providing this kind of level of access and information creates a foundation for accessibility and equity within this industry. Information education needs to be widely available, and this is just one way we can imagine that. So part of the reason why we're doing this read through is we're at day, let's say 30. We got 30 days left just about for this comment period. So these regs that we're going to be reading through have been proposed, and we're reading through them now to digest and in turn develop perspective. And sometimes that perspective leaves us with questions and in turn comments to give to the OCM for clarification. And sometimes it gives us the opportunity to present alternative pathways or other kind of resolutions to these regulations. We're accompanied by two of the leading cannabis attorneys that I know of in New York State, and really great brains who offer awesome perspective. This is a great place to engage. So please use the chat. I'm going to open the chat right now and just make sure everyone can talk to everybody. Right now, great, everyone can use the chat. Feel free to drop in the chat where you're checking in from, even maybe what you're interested in here. There's also the Q&A. So we'll be watching the chat and the Q&A thoroughly. And love just answering questions on the fly. It creates more perspective in this process. So without further ado, I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves. Jason, you can start, and then we'll dive right in.
All right, thanks, Zach. I'm Jason Klimek. I am the chair of the policy committee for CANY, as well as the chair of the tax committee for the New York State Bar's Cannabis Law section, and the leader of the cannabis practice at Barclay Damon.
I am also on the policy committee with Jason. My name's Elise Bergio, and I am executive leadership for New York State Bar Association's cannabis section, and I work as general counsel and strategic advisor for two women-owned businesses in the cannabis space.
Great. And my name is Zach Sarkis. I am the chair of the education committee with the Cannabis Association of New York. Also work and sit on the policy committee and work with the library, Rochester Public Library, in helping develop cannabis related content and services. Also a small business owner and someone who's been operating this space as a cultivator and have interests that I bring to the table. So we got some unique perspectives here, and really happy to have everyone on the call. So as discussed, we're picking up on 123.8. Let me just share my screen in traditional read through format. And great. Okay, sweet. Can you see the screen? We're all good, great. All right, so we're picking up here on section 123.8, distributor operations. And that's just going to lay out what distributors can and cannot do. So a distributor shall A1, comply with Article 20C of the tax law, as well as other applicable provisions of the law. So, a distributor, as the law currently stands with taxes, collects the potency tax when making a sale to the retailer. So, meaning the total cost of sale of a distributor's product to a retailer includes the potency taxes that the retailer is paying to the distributor, and then the distributor is then liable to pay the government that potency tax. And Jason, I'm sure you got this number a little bit more dialed in. If you could maybe just provide us an update on what those taxes are.
Sure. So the potency tax, and we're not talking about the retail tax. The retail tax is a 13% tax that's collected by the retailers, paid by consumers. Not that. We're talking about the potency tax that is based on the amount of THC in milligrams in a given cannabis product. And there are three categories. There's flower, that's taxed at 0.5 cents per milligram. Concentrates, which would include vape cartridges, topicals, distillates, things like that, that's taxed at 0.8 of a cent per milligram of THC. And then there's edibles, which also include beverages, that are taxed at 3 cents per milligram of THC. So to give you kind of like a concrete example, if you had a pound of 20% flour, 20% THC flour, that, let's say, itself was selling for $1,000 from wholesale to retail, that would also accumulate $454 in the THC potency tax. So the distributor would actually end up charging the retailer $1,454, and that would be the cost of that pound with the THC excise tax. And then the distributor would take that excise tax and remit it to the state.
Great. And just for folks who aren't aware, New York State has currently opened its tax portal, online tax portal for distributors. So currently farmers who are licensed as AUCC cultivators can register for their temporary distribution permits and portal that allows folks to pay online their distributor this tax structure we're talking about here.
We do have a question, Zach. I don't know if we want to answer it now. It's unrelated to this, but we can answer it if you want to take the time now or wait till the end.
Let's so what is the question? At the initial time of application, does a social and economic equity community benefit plan need to be completed and submitted in detail, or is a summary of the plan okay with the details to be submitted after preliminary approval? If either you would like to comment on that, I'm also happy to offer my 2 cents.
What it looks like in the regs is that your social, and they call it a social impact plan, needs to be submitted as part of the application and will be part of the criteria in determining whether you get a license. So I do believe that it needs to be as detailed as possible so that they can properly evaluate the plan and therefore, you can get the license. I think if you just kind of left it in an outline form, you would be hindered potentially. That's my read on it.
Yeah, I also think, like, now that the social equity report's been submitted by Damien, take what their goals are in that report and translate that for you and your specific license. And hey, it might be broad, because obviously sometimes, when you don't, like, the thing is that there isn't an operating plan being submitted at application. Right. I mean, there's some stuff like very general that you'll be submitting for app. But do your best with what they're focusing on at the state level and your inclusion at the application level, to apply their goals within your store or your cultivation site or what have you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. All right, to continue with distributor operations. So we said they will comply with Article 20C of the tax law, as we discussed. They shall only transport cannabis products, one, between adult use cannabis licensees and between the licensed premises of adult use cannabis facility for the purpose of distributing the cannabis products, or an employee thereof or other person acting on behalf of the distributor who shall possess or transport cannabis products upon the public highways, roads, streets of the state shall have in their possession invoices and manifests for such cannabis products. Such invoice and manifest shall show the name, the time, the name, the address of the seller, the name, the address of the purchaser, and the quantity, the product type, and brands of the cannabis product being distributed, and the name and address of the person who shall assume the payment of the tax as or the tax paid or payable. The absence of such invoice and manifest shall be a prima facie evidence that the tax imposed by Article 20-C of the tax law on cannabis product has not been paid and is due and owing. 4, shall maintain records of all cannabis products purchased and distributed to retail dispensaries or on-site consumption sites and send such records to the office's inventory tracking system real-time in a manner determined by the office. Such records shall provide enough detail to independently determine the taxability of each sale, the tax liability for each cannabis product sold, and the amount of tax payable by the distributor. Detailed information for each sales transaction, including but not limited to individual cannabis product items sold, selling price, the tax due, the method of payment, the employee completing the sales transaction, the device used to complete a sales transaction that may be a combination of software or hardware, a sales transaction number, the date and time of sale, the name, address, and license number of the retail dispenser on-site consumption premises, and retail dispensary and on-site consumption premise shall be offered a receipt of their purchase, which shall include but not be limited to the name, address, and license number of the distributor, the date and time of sale, the form and the quantity of the cannabis products and any other item sold, and the employee completing the sale. So obviously just right there in that little transaction, the distributor's got to have a lot of information on every time a package leaves a distribution's, let's just call it facility. And in turn, then going to any other recipient of said distributor's like distribution process, specifically a retailer or on-site consumption. So the distributor's got to have a manifest that's pretty robust. And then the receipt also has to be pretty robust that they'll leave with the particular purchaser. So again, just it's kind of data. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, where are the templates for this? What are the, what is it, software templates? Is there existing templates? Is it a Google sheet or, et cetera? But how do we streamline that process? So 5, keep and maintain upon the licensed premises adequate books and records to demonstrate the distributor's actual cost of doing business using accounting standards and methods regularly employed in the determination of the cost for the purpose of federal income tax reporting for the total operation of the distributor. Such books, records, and invoice shall be kept for a period of 5 years and should be available for the inspection of the office.
To me, that's pretty crazy. Because
5 years is long.
Well, and not just that, but the fact that like you have to open your books and records to the office, like not just your taxes or something like that. Like in what other context does a business have to just lay their books and records on the table for the government to inspect whenever they want? I don't know any, frankly. So that seems very odd to me.
Cool, appreciate that. Taking note, Jason. 6, a distributor shall comply with any fees, maximum margins, price posting requirements, and any policies related to market competition and license availability restrictions determined by the office.
Have we heard anything about price posting?
Just that the OCM is interested in it. I haven't heard follow up on that, and I'm not aware of anyone implementing anything at the time. In addition to the requirements set forth in subdivision A of this section, a distributor shall not 1, transport cannabis products to an adult use cannabis retail dispensary on-site consumption premises for the purpose of retail sale unless it is a license as a distributor under the cannabis law of this chapter. Transport cannabis products to a retail dispensary on-site consumption unless the retail dispensary on-site consumption premises holds a valid or current license as a retail dispensary on-site consumption premises respectively. 3, accept, sell, transfer, distribute, and agree to sell, transfer, or distribute any cannabis products unless it is in a retail package labeled pursuant to Part 128 of this title. So I'm curious if there's a level of accountability there. Is it up to the distributor to reject packaging, and check, cross-reference every form of package that comes in to ensure it's compliant and so it kind of seems like it's extending that responsibility beyond the let's say manufacturer or a farm.
Well, I do believe that it was in the packaging and labeling regs, which is Part 128, that kind of almost deputized the retailers and distributors to report non-compliant packaging.
Yep, great. Any unlabeled cannabis product in the possession of distributor shall be deemed illicit cannabis as defined by section 136 of the cannabis law and may be subject to the penalties described therein and any penalties or sanctions as determined by the board, including but not limited to cancellation, suspension, revocation of license, and imposition of fees, civil penalties, and other penalty. And so this is an interesting one because the way the rules read in the MRTA, the term distributor in this case includes all employees, everyone. And so obviously we've had discussions about, we're talking about volume based, but just the risk of, let's say, an employee having unlabeled cannabis product on their possession or transferring that, being kind of caught with that could run risk for the whole company, the whole the distributor license holder. So it's not a huge thing, but it's definitely, it stands out as just, making sure that in the realm of distribution, you got to be really make sure you have everything's got to be labeled, and it's definitely a focus point for regulation. May not accept, sell, transfer, distribute, or agree to sell, transfer, or distribute any cannabis product that has not been tested pursuant to Part 130 of this title, as indicated by a certificate of analysis. And also may not furnish or cause to be furnished any license, any exterior or interior sign, printed, painted, digital, or otherwise, unless authorized by the office. So if I'm not mistaken, that's like you can't have any signage or anything on your car or on your building. So
and you can't give it to somebody to put into their retail dispensary or something like that.
Mhm.
Okay, so that is the short and sweet distributor parameters. So on a level, it feels like is there anything missing in there? Just compared to how long other sections are, but I'm not so sure. It's interesting to kind of breeze through that. All right, 123.9, retail dispensary ownership, interest, business authorizations, and prohibitions. Another interesting thing too is like it was just distributor operations, when every other section is titled with this, it introduces the dispensary ownership, interest, business authorization, and prohibitions, and then it goes into operations in this subsection. But distributor is just purely 123.8 distributor operations.
No, there is 123.7.
Oh, did we miss that then?
I don't know. I can't remember what we did last week or on Tuesday.
Oh, well, I may have missed something. Okay, well, we'll pick up on. Don't look too deeply into the fine print, folks. But there may be a section that we covered on last. So, all right, Jason, can you take over 128.3.9?
Sure. All right, a retail dispensary may acquire cannabis product from any licensee authorized for distribution of such product. A retail dispensary may acquire seedlings and immature plants from a licensee authorized as a nursery once adult use home cultivation is authorized by the board. So that should hypothetically, now that we have the first adult use sale, which happened on December 29th, 2022, I believe the 18-month period ends on June 29th, 2024. That should be when adult use home cultivation is allowed, and you would go ahead.
Oh, just at the latest. The language reads it by the latest 18 months. So technically it could happen any day now, but it's likely going to be pushed to the end.
Yeah, just like we saw with the medical.
Yep. There's actually a couple. Go ahead, Jason. There's just a couple of questions that do have to pertain to distributor license. Teresa asks, can a cultivator receive a distributor license without having a processor license?
Yes.
Yeah. As it stands, and
that was actually changed. Originally in the law, it was you had to have both in order to get the distribution, but switched that up.
Yeah. And then there's a quick question: a micro business with distribution of only immature plants to consumers, the potency tax will not be an issue. The micro business will only charge 13% tax. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's on measurable THC. So if it doesn't have THC, then the tax is 0, and then it would just be 13%.
Great.
So hold on, let's go back to that question just to dive in more. Are you planning to have a retail store that
as a micro?
Yeah, the micro would still have to do it at their retail level.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Not at their distribution level, just so everybody.
Yeah, cool. Yep, we did transition into retail there. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
All right, take it away, Jason.
Okay. Retail dispensary may possess, sell, and deliver cannabis products and cannabis paraphernalia. A retail dispensary may sell cannabis products and cannabis paraphernalia to cannabis consumers. A retail dispensary may operate in adjoining premises for the consumption of adult use cannabis products sold by such retail dispensary pursuant to approval by the board and complying with all other operating requirements in this chapter. Now, that I think warrants a little discussion. And I know through the Bar Association, we've been talking about this. That on its face seems to violate the MRTA. The MRTA has a strict prohibition that if you have an interest in a retail dispensary, you cannot have an interest in an on-site consumption license. And the fact that an on-site consumption license exists in the statute would seem to indicate that that is not a function that a retail dispensary can do. And it does, a retail dispensary under the statute is not authorized to do on-site consumption. So this seems to be a case where the regulations just outright violate the statute, which is obviously a problem because regs have to operate within the statute. And so I don't know why this is there. This was never really, to my knowledge, previously discussed. It was always two separate licenses. But I think it's worth pointing out because my personal opinion is that can't survive. And then it just makes the on-site consumption license superfluous. Like, what's the point if retail dispensary can do it?
Yeah,
So I
totally.
had this conversation with Axel on Tuesday. I pointed this part out to him. He is of the strong opinion that it doesn't violate the law, that it would violate the law if you had an actual, if it was considered, he's not considering it technically on-site. He's not considering it a license. He's like merely offering it as like a way to consume like right after your purchase, essentially.
Which is, which is literally on-site, the purpose of on-site consumption.
And as we all know, it's super common to have a liquor store where you can go out back and start slugging the bottle that you just bought.
Yeah.
We were kind of going back, and I said to him, he goes, well, who's mad about this? I was like, obviously people who want on-site.
Yeah, and if we begin to think about like any radius clauses regarding on-site,
yes,
and as well as dispensing, it's like it does have a substantial impact, and it literally nullifies the need for on-site consumption on a level by saying, yeah, you can have literally your facility right here. And what's it like? You're not going to be able to buy. As I understand the way the on-site consumption is defined in the MRTA, you're purchasing packaged flower, packaged accordingly, in small doses or small amounts. On-site can only have a minimal amount of inventory and maybe not even a full breadth of products accessible that you could buy at a dispensary. So essentially, now you can have a dispensary that can sell anything at probably bigger amounts and then host a next door consumption space, which again, in general, I'm not radically opposed. It's just like, it seems so contradictory to the language we've seen elsewhere. And again, there's a lot of interest in this on-site consumption, but not a clear pathway forward. So we'll see what it becomes.
Another one of his arguments, and it's not invalid, is just they are basically going blind into this license structure and they don't know what works yet. So, but it doesn't really matter because for purposes of the legislation, that is problematic. But he was basically like, hey, you got all these states, like even Colorado legalized this in 2019, still don't really have it going. He's like, LA has like 6 stores. He's like, we have no clue what this is actually, how it's going to be. He's like, we don't even know if these are going to be profitable. Like, you don't even really know if on-site's going to work in the grand scheme of it. So, I think that they're going to probably see, like, does it work better with if this doesn't get violated, right? Is it going to work better being attached to a dispensary, or does it work better as a standalone, kind of almost, I think they both will work in their own accord, just because it'll be like, I think more exclusive clubs with on-site, like people are going to have them be like membership clubs and things of higher caliber. But
and my opinion on this too is that, regardless of whether you think it's right or wrong or blah, 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 the obvious solution is just to have the law change. Like the legislature, if it comes from OCM and it's not hurting the industry or anything like that, I'm sure that they would be willing to amend the law. So why take the chance when everything New York is doing is under the microscope that somebody might want to sue? I mean, it hasn't worked out great for Card right now. Like, why take the chance?
Especially just with like the 30 bills that are in right now by like CANY alone,
Yeah. Mary asked the question, how will they actually regulate the only cannabis consumed there will be the cannabis purchased from that facility, and let's just say not illicit cannabis. So that's an interesting thought.
I mean, I think you have to kind of look to the bars, like regular bars, alcohol bars, as like the model of, could you sneak in liquor? I guess. Do people do it? I don't know. I don't think it's too common, but then again, I don't really know.
True, but then also coming back to, like, you know, traditionally cannabis consumption has not been a safe thing to do in public. It's not, you know, it's been pushed into vehicles or pushed into places where it actually shouldn't be. So like a space that allows for consumption will, I would imagine, automatically draw people there. And yeah, it's very complicated. It's interesting.
I mean, I also think like people are going to get creative with it, especially on site. If you do bring your own weed, like corking fees, or they're going to force you to buy food, or, you know, or you're a member and you're bringing your weed, but you pay a monthly fee. I mean, like, there's going to be ways, I think, independent of on-site dispensary consumption, there will be ways for them to monitor bringing weed from outside. But
Yep. All right.
What are we on here? F. All
F,
right.
yeah.
Sales of cannabis products shall only be executed by licensees authorized to conduct sales of cannabis to consumers. Any person found to be selling cannabis unlawfully may be subject to criminal prosecution under Article 222 of the Penal Law. No person other than a passive investor in a retail dispensary license shall be a true party of interest in more than 3 retail dispensary licenses.
So that's total of 9, possibly 9 dispensaries, correct?
What?
If each could, because
a passive investor is somebody who owns less than 20% or 20% or less and doesn't have any management or control. So if you're in that case, you could be a passive investor in unlimited numbers of licenses, unlimited number of retail licenses.
the key on passive investors is really, you have no decision-making powers. You're really, it's almost like being a financier to an extent, except you're not giving them a loan. You do have equity in the company, but you have 0 decision-making powers.
Yeah, you're the money, and that's it.
And so what I was saying about the dispensary license, and maybe we'll come process, is a dispensary license allow for, I thought it allowed for more than 1 location, and that's what I was asking.
No, each location is its own separate license. So you can do 3, if you are a TPI, you can do 3 licenses, period, which is 3 locations.
And was it then maybe the medical companies can have 3? There was some, I'm not sure where that number comes from, but let's continue.
Okay. A retail dispensary or its true party of interest may also be true parties of interest in a delivery license. A retail dispensary or its true parties of interest may be a landlord, financier, or goods and services provider to an on-site consumption or delivery license, provided that the retail dispensary or its true parties of interest do not exceed authorized true party of interest ownership limits. In addition to any other restrictions or prohibitions in this part, no retail dispensary or its true parties of interest is permitted to hold a direct or indirect interest or be a true party of interest, passive investor, landlord, financier, management service provider, or by any other means to a cultivator, processor, distributor, cooperative, microbusiness, ROD, ROND, registered organization, or cannabis laboratory licensee or permittee, or any person licensed outside of New York State who are licensed to function as any of the aforementioned licensees. So let's unpack that, because that's a lot. So first, what does that mean? If you're a passive investor, and this, I'm going to pick on this one particularly, if you're a passive investor, you can be in an unlimited number of retail licenses, but you cannot cross that tier into cultivation, processing, distribution. So you are still a true party of interest despite being a passive investor. They just allow you to go to unlimited number of retail licenses. And if you are part of a license, if you are a true party of interest, you cannot have any interest outside the state in the cultivation tier, or in the supply tier. So it's a very important thing that if you're a retail dispensary and you're looking to bring on investors, you're vetting all these people to make sure that they don't have an interest in some other state where they have an interest in the supply tier. And a lot of states are vertically integrated or allow for vertical integration. So, you know, you really got to make sure that you vet your TPIs to make sure that they're not going to blow this for your license, because ultimately it's your license that's on the table. Unlicensed people really can't be affected by OCM, other than they can ban them from the industry or something like that. Okay. All right. Retail dispensary operations, 123.10. A retail dispensary shall be a physical brick and mortar store in New York State with posted hours of operation to be authorized to sell cannabis products and related items to cannabis consumers by in-person sale, over the internet, or via digital application as set forth in this chapter. The retail dispensary may operate a drive-through service window and pre-order customer pickup lanes with prior approval from the office and in compliance with all state and local laws, rules, and regs. Retail dispensary supervision and staffing requirements includes, but is not limited to, the following. No employee shall be an employee in charge of more than one retail dispensary at the same time, and the following activities are to be performed and overseen by the retail dispensary's employee or designee in charge: the proper conduct of employees of the retail dispensary, the immediate supervision and management of the retail dispensary during hours of operation, opening and closing the facility, activities of retail dispensary employees, inventory and delivery acceptance, record keeping and maintenance of files subject to audit or inspection by the office, employee training and compliance with state and local laws and regulations, maintaining and providing to the office upon request the retail dispensary's staffing plan for staff involved in activities related to the sale of cannabis products. The staffing plan shall be updated with any change in the employment status of retail dispensary employees within 5 business days of such change. Notifying the office of the termination of the employee for diversion of cannabis product or theft of currency within 24 hours of termination. So note those reporting deadlines: 5 days, 24 hours. Notifying the office of any change of information required to be reported to the office, and any other activity determined by the office. Verification of identification and proof of age for retail dispensaries. No retail dispensary shall sell, deliver, or give away, or cause or permit or procure to be sold, delivered, or given away any cannabis or cannabis product to any individual actually or seemingly under the age of 21 years of age, or any visibly intoxicated individual. That's, you know,
That one's hard.
yeah, it's a subjective term. I think it's pretty much the same in alcohol, but you know, that's definitely going to be one where it's a judgment call. Retail dispensary staff shall inspect the individual's identification and determine the individual's age to validate that the individual's 21 years of age or older. Valid identification and proof of age shall include a valid driver's license or non-driver identification card issued by the Department of Motor Vehicles, the federal government, any United States territory, Commonwealth or possession, the District of Columbia, a state or local government within the United States, or a provincial government of the Dominion of Canada. A valid state or federal, state, or local government identification, including ID NYC, stating that the customer's age and photograph of the individual's face. A valid passport issued by the United States government or any other country, or any identification card issued by the Armed Forces of the United States. That one's tricky because military members still count.
Totally.
Just be careful.
Not funny, but definitely just,
yeah,
you know,
that's definitely
complex.
Essentially a court martial. The retail dispensary employee may perform a transaction scan of the customer's identification as a precondition to the sale of any cannabis or cannabis product. Online orders, telephone orders, or other means or of orders not made in person for cannabis products shall include an attestation that the individual ordering is 21 years of age or older. The retail dispensary employee who transports the cannabis product for delivery or a curbside pickup order shall obtain verification of the identity and the age of the cannabis consumer at the point of delivery or curbside pickup by viewing or scanning a document described in this part before providing the cannabis product to the cannabis consumer. If the individual placing the order will not be the individual accepting the order, the individual placing the order shall attest that the individual accepting the order is over 21 years of age, and that the individual shall provide verification of identity and age at the time of accepting the delivery or dispensing. Both individuals' identities shall be recorded in the licensee's point of sale system. A retail dispensary may not acquire or record cannabis consumer personal information without consent unless this information is typically acquired in a sales transaction, which can include the cannabis consumer's age. Cannabis product sales requirements. A retail dispensary will be operational and available to sell cannabis products to cannabis consumers only during their designated hours of operation as provided in the application for a license or in the retail dispensary operating plan. Retail dispensaries may operate within the business hours stipulated in section 119.2 of this title, unless operating hours are otherwise specified by the jurisdiction in which the business operates. The retail dispensary shall have a licensed premises that measures not less than the minimum square footage as determined by the office. Post visible to consumers its hours of operation in a conspicuous location inside each retail dispensary premises. Post visible to consumers any and all signs or posted placards required by the office, including posting of the adult use retail dispensary license issued by the office in a conspicuous location inside the retail dispensary premises.
Here's a quick question. So obviously this is all pertaining to inside, and there's a lot of, pushback against outward facing communication. But you'd think, is this preventing the post visible to consumers its hours of operation in a conspicuous location inside? What about on the door? Is that prohibited in the same way we've kind of seen them resisting to any kind of street facing information? It seems pretty reasonable that
the fact that they keep saying inside when they could have just said location, conspicuous location, really makes it seem like they want it contained. Hours, I don't know why that's the case, but
don't mind me.
All right. Only offer for sale cannabis products, cannabis paraphernalia intended for the storage or use of cannabis products, branded merchandise of the licensee. That's an important distinction right there, of the licensee, referring to the retail dispensary licensee, or any other items as determined by the office. Retail dispensaries selling cannabinoid hemp products must obtain a license from the office in accordance with Article 5 of the cannabis law. That's a hemp retail license.
Mm-hmm.
Offer for sale or provide containers to consumers for the storage.
One second here. So a retail dispensary selling hemp products may obtain a license in accordance with Article 5. So that's a $300 permit per location. But it's interesting because as we discussed, the rules pertaining to hemp products that can be sold and incongruencies between hemp products, state transferred or THC derived from hemp-based products, etc., and even taxing. If you can get a THC product that's hemp derived in a beverage form, you're selling it underneath your cannabinoid hemp product, are you responsible for the THC tax versus not?
Yes.
Yeah.
I am not of the mindset that the whole hemp derived THC thing is even federally legal, but it's certainly not state legal. Delta 9 is Delta 9 as far as the state is concerned, and that requires sourcing it through the THC supply chain and having all the proper taxes collected, so on and so forth.
Now, curious here about a 2,400 milligram tincture that has a total of CBD that likely has 60, 70, 80 milligrams of THC in it, but it is federally legal and it's in the appropriate ratio as governed by the state. Is that subject to the THC tax, though it is a CBD product that I can sell on a website with my hemp retail license and not have to collect the tax on that THC percentage when it has that content? And it's kind of
so, under the state's hemp rules, a 2,400 milligram tincture could have up to 72 milligrams of THC. That would be 0.3%. That should be allowed to be obtained through the hemp program, and you wouldn't have to necessarily do it through the THC program. So, I think I'm pretty sure that's in the hemp regs.
Yeah,
So-
it definitely is. And then it's like, and just thinking about kind of these alternative pathways there, it's like, okay, we'll put what's 72 mgs times, in that case, it's an edible, so 3 cents a milligram.
That is
Yeah, it's $2 and
$2.16.
it's not substantial, but it is just an interesting note of like, all right, we're talking about cannabinoids here, and this kind of challenge of like, how do these things mesh further down the road when they're currently standing as standalone? It's really interesting.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. I think we're on 5. Yeah. Offer for sale or provide containers to consumers for storage, secure storage of cannabis that lock and are child resistant pursuant to Part 128 of this title. Utilize an inventory tracking system pursuant to Section 125.7 of this title with the capability of compiling a retail dispensary's cannabis product inventory, transaction data, and tax liability as prescribed by the office. The retail dispensary system shall be compatible with the compatible and capable of reporting the data to the office on a real-time basis. Conduct a monthly analysis of its inventory tracking system to determine that no software has been installed that could be utilized to manipulate or alter inventory or sales data, and that no other methodology has been employed to manipulate or alter data. The use of any means to willfully underreport or overreport sales or manipulate inventory is prohibited and subject to penalties in accordance with Part 133 of this title. And dedicate a minimum of 40% of shelf space available for cannabis products cultivated or processed by cultivators and processors that are not RODs for a period of 5 years from the first retail sale in New York. So until, what would that be, December 29, 2027, 40% have to be not one of the current ROs. All right. A retail dispensary may display in secure locked cases samples of each cannabis product offered for sale. Authorized employees may remove samples from the display case and provide it to the cannabis consumer for inspection, provided the cannabis consumer may not consume or otherwise use or remove the sample from the retail dispensary.
I actually do want to back it up. I glazed over for a second on the 40%, but that 40% shelf space available for cannabis products cultivated or processed by cultivators. One, there's an error right there on the by underscore cultivators that are not ROD for a period of 5 years. So that's just an interesting thing to note, because there is a lot of concern about how big and capable these RODs and large scale companies can come in. But this kind of mandate that a minimum of 40% shelf space be for those who are not immediately RODs is just an interesting thing to underline.
And it's worth noting it's RODs. So if one of the ROs decides they don't want to do adult use dispensing and they are an ROND, then that 40% doesn't apply to them. So for example, if Curaleaf decided they don't want to do dispensing in New York, they're not subject to that. But if Green Thumb did, they would be. Just a note. Okay. Where were we? 3? We did
just
I'll do
3. Yeah.
A retail dispensary may display in secure lock cases samples of each cannabis product offered for sale. Authorized employees may remove samples from the display case and provide it to the cannabis consumer for inspection, provided the cannabis consumer may not consume or otherwise use or remove the sample. Cannabis products shall only be sold by authorized employees of the retail dispensary who shall be 21 years of age or older if interacting with cannabis consumers. A retail dispensary shall be in a location consistent with public convenience and advantage standards as determined by the board. So we still don't know exactly what this is yet, but the alcohol law, this is the standard right from the alcohol law. So presumably they're going to, kind of copy that standard. And it basically deals with, are there enough dispensaries to serve the population? Is there oversupply, undersupply, things like that? So those are what they're going to look to most likely to determine that. Cannabis product sales transaction requirements. Each sale transaction record shall be sent to the office's inventory tracking system, real time, in a manner determined by the office, and provide enough detail to independently determine the taxability of each sale and the amount of tax due and collected. Detailed information required for each sale transaction includes, but is not limited to, the individual items sold, including the form and the quantity of cannabis products and any other items sold, selling price, tax due, including a separate delineation for each tax imposed on adult use cannabis pursuant to Article 20C of the tax law, method of payment, employee completing the sales transaction, device that was used to complete a sales transaction that may be a combination of software and hardware, unique identifier for the sales transaction, and date and time of the sale. A cannabis consumer shall be offered a receipt for their purchase, including but not limited to the name, address, and license number of the retail dispensary, the date and time of the sale, the form and the quantity of cannabis product and any other items sold, the employee completing the sale, and the tax paid, including a separate delineation for each tax imposed on adult use cannabis pursuant to Article 20C of the tax law. Cannabis products purchased by a cannabis consumer may be placed in an exit package in accordance with Part 128 of this title. Nothing in the section shall prevent a retail dispensary employee from refusing to sell cannabis products if, in their judgment, doing so could endanger the health or safety of the cannabis consumer.
So just on that software component, for those who know, like Dutchie was awarded the software for the DASNY card licenses. But if you noticed, obviously the nonprofit Housing Works did their first sale not on Dutchie. So if you're not for profit in the card program, you don't have to use Dutchie. But if you are in the card program and are part of the DASNY fund, you have to use Dutchie. We'll see how it plays out in the general. If they're gonna, I don't think they'll require one, but who knows?
Retail dispensary prohibitions. A retail dispensary shall not violate distance requirements as set forth out in 119.4 of the most confusing thing ever written by a human.
Which, I mean, loosely, it's, these radius clauses, correct? And then
Yeah, where they hit a triple negative. Yeah.
And then the proximity to houses of worship or community centers.
Yep. Okay. Conduct or transact business as a retail dispensary under a name which contains as part thereof the words drugs, medicine, drugstore, apothecary, pharmacy, or similar terms or combination of terms, or in any manner by advertisement, circular, poster, sign, or otherwise described or refer to the licensed premises or describe the type of service or class of products sold by the retail dispensary by the terms drug, medicine, drugstore, apothecary, or pharmacy. A retail dispensary name shall comply with the requirements of Part 129 of this title.
You wonder, have you guys seen how Glass House's dispensary is called pharmacy, but it's like FARMACY, like
seem to violate that.
Yeah.
Display cannabis products or cannabis paraphernalia in an area that is visible from the exterior of the physical structure of the retail dispensary.
Today.
Sell or otherwise dispense any cannabis product later than the product date of expiration or use by date marked on the label. However, when the cannabis product is identified as an outdated product, the secure segregation and holding of such product beyond its date of expiration or use by date for disposal shall not be deemed a violation. This paragraph. Dispense or otherwise sell cannabis products from a vending machine or allow such a vending machine to be installed at the interior or exterior of the premises of the retail dispensary.
That's kind of funny because everyone's talking about vending machines right now.
Yeah.
It's a really big thing. Yeah.
Abandon the licensed premises without surrendering the license to the board and making appropriate arrangements for the disposal of cannabis products. Sell cannabis products obtained through the use of or accept a sale of cannabis products from a business that does not hold a license in New York State pursuant to Article 4 of the Cannabis Law. Provide cannabis samples to a cannabis consumer other than to allow inspection of the product prior to purchase. Allow employees under 21 years of age to have direct interaction with cannabis customers inside a licensed retail dispensary. Engage in cannabis processing, manufacturing, or compounding at the retail dispensary. That's an important distinction. That means like dispensaries can't do pre-rolls, which in a lot of other states they do. So, and that is one way to lighten the load under 280E, because then you can get a cost of goods deduction in there, but not in New York. You will buy your pre-rolls from the distributor and just sell them. Knowingly sell, deliver, or give away to a cannabis consumer any amount of cannabis product which they know would cause the cannabis consumer to be in violation of the cannabis law or possession limits established by Article 222 of the Penal Law. Remember, that's 3 ounces in public. You can have 5 pounds at home, but 3 ounces in public.
And then how many grams of extract? Is it 25 grams?
24, I believe.
24.
And it's so you can, I believe, have both 3 ounces and 24 grams, which is a lot. Any cannabis product, cannabis paraphernalia, or cannabis merchandise, if the cannabis consumer is unable to produce valid proof of government issued identification and age confirming that they are 21 years of age or older. Cannabis products, if the opinion of the retail dispensary employee based on the information available to them at the time, the cannabis consumer or the public would be placed at risk. This includes, but is not limited to, the cannabis consumer engaging in daily transactions that exceed the legal possession limits or create risk of diversion. Food, beverage, or personal care item that is not a cannabis product. Any product that contains nicotine, and alcohol is defined in Section 3 of the ABC law. Make recommendations to a cannabis consumer who is also a medical cannabis patient if the patient's dosing recommendation is per pharmacist consultation, and that the patient presents their patient certification issued under the authority of Part 113 of this title at the retail dispensary without disclosing to the cannabis consumer that they are not a pharmacist. Further, any patient who presents a valid medical cannabis patient certification shall be provided a list of the nearest registered organization dispensing facilities. Solicit or
even just noting there, so that means retail dispensaries must have a list of local medical dispensaries on hand to provide to anybody who presents a valid medical cannabis patient certification. So just note, that's just another thing a dispensary must have to be in compliance.
Yep. Solicit or receive an order for, keep or expose for sale, or keep with intent to sell any cannabis product or cannabinoid hemp product to a cannabis consumer by means of any vehicle or wheeled frame used for transporting objects, for carrying goods and materials, including but not limited to a cart, car, van, truck, or trailer. Place back into stock of any retail dispensary or redispensed cannabis product which is returned by a cannabis consumer. The returned product shall be quarantined for disposal in compliance with Part 125 of this title. Sell any form of or type of cannabis product not permitted by this chapter. Sell any cannabis products that have not passed quality assurance laboratory testing pursuant to Part 130 of this title. Sell any cannabis products for which the required tax pursuant to Article 20C of the tax law has not been paid. Sell any cannabis product that does not meet the packaging and labeling requirements in Part 128 of this title. Advertise or market any cannabis or cannabis products not in compliance with Part 129 of this title. Allow the consumption of any cannabis product by employees, individuals, or cannabis consumers inside the premises of the retail dispensary without prior approval from the office. So presumably the office could approve your employees to consume cannabis.
But there's also language, other parts in this document that prohibits being under the influence of any drugs, including cannabis, while working. And so that's just an interesting thing to note in general. And it's also kind of this is my personal opinion, and like reflecting the assumption that cannabis consumers are dysfunctional, are incapable, or, or are danger, or, just kind of like that dysfunctional concept where we all know functional cannabis consumers. We also know folks who, once they consume cannabis, aren't maybe productively functional, et cetera. So it's just these blanket statements. It's just an interesting thing to note.
Market its cannabis product through an online platform that is operated by a third party, and fulfill any order referred to it by a third party platform. Exceptions. Nothing in this section shall prohibit delivery of cannabis products into a town, city, or village that, by local law, prohibits the establishment of a retail dispensary. I always thought that was an interesting exception. It really just gets around the whole opt-out thing, but whatever.
Yeah.
And delivery of cannabis products into a local jurisdiction beyond the prohibited hours for retail dispensary sales in such jurisdiction, provided that the delivery occurs within the hours of operation set forth in this section.
Which essentially says like you can't have hours of operation, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere between the time of 2 a.m. and 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. And it may be later in some cases, 4 a.m. and 8 a.m., which is just interesting to know, but pretty certain it's standard too.
Yeah, it's out of our alcohol laws that only bad things happen between like 2 and 8 apparently, or 4 and 8.
The bewitching hour. So.
Okay, cannabis consumer education and resources. A retail dispensary shall provide consumer education materials to each consumer at the time of sale that include messages about safe consumption of cannabis products, public health, and other educational messages as established in guidance by the office.
So just to note, like that could be a lot, and it's every consumer. So every bag has to have a takeaway of what. And I ask like for how long, and like every reoccurring customer, someone who knows cannabis, every single time a package gets sent out. And I'm asking that in the context of like sustainability and an actual need versus like, of course, like having information accessible to folks is important, like no questions asked, but the shall provide consumer education materials to each consumer at the time of sale. It's just like, I don't need that. I don't need that every time I go to a dispensary, and I probably for the rest of my life. So it's just like,
with the crazy amount of sustainability stuff in here, the fact that that's a requirement, though consumer education materials may be made available in print or digital form and shall be prominently displayed. Perhaps if the exit packaging had a QR code on it, maybe that's enough and that's sustainable. Because yes, I imagine if you stuck in a bunch of papers and flyers, it's just a waste of paper for cannabis consumers. A retail dispensary shall have an adequate supply of current customer education materials available for distribution to consumers. Consumer education materials may never make health claims regarding cannabis or cannabis products. A retail dispensary may create.
Which I do want to note, obviously the claims is one thing, but like just literally the way the endocannabinoid system works, it is innately a health oriented thing, and the way that it interfaces with our systems, like you can't delineate the health implications or supplements or adaptations of cannabis consumption. Obviously making claims like this will heal you is not appropriate, but it is also just like to describe the endocannabinoid system and in turn how phytocannabinoids interface with that system, just basic science, like has some pretty strong like implications regardless, which is interesting to note.
A retail dispensary may create their own or utilize current and relevant education materials created from a third-party source, provided that the primary purpose of the educational materials is to educate cannabis consumers about safer consumption of cannabis products. A retail dispensary that allows a third party to create educational materials on its behalf is responsible to ensure that such material complies with all the applicable state and local laws, rules, and regulations. Content containing cannabis product claims or studies shall be referenced. The retail dispensary shall be required to display or make available to cannabis consumers certain public health and other educational materials provided or required by the office. Consumer education materials shall be made available for inspection by the office upon request. Storage requirements. All cannabis products shall be stored in accordance with Part 125 of this title. A retail dispensary shall store working stock of cannabis products locked behind a counter or other barrier to ensure a cannabis consumer does not have direct access to the cannabis product. Retail dispensary shall have policies and procedures in place for the handling and storage of cash at the retail dispensary and for transportation of cash to financial institutions to prevent theft, loss, and associated risks to the safety of employees, customers, and the general public. Delivery service. Retail dispensaries providing delivery service shall have a written delivery service plan available for inspection by the office. Delivery of cannabis products to a cannabis consumer shall be conducted in accordance with Part 125 of this title. Shall be limited to ground transportation unless another delivery method is approved by the office. So no drones yet. May include delivery of cannabis products, cannabis paraphernalia, or merchandise available at the retail dispensary.
Which we noted can only be branded either general material or branded to the dispensary, but not from any other product or brand besides the dispensary itself.
Yep. May only be conducted during the retail dispensary's hours of operations and may only be made to the address identified by the customer upon purchase. The employee who delivers cannabis products to a cannabis consumer shall obtain verification of the identity and age of the cannabis consumer at the point of delivery to confirm that they are 21 years of age or older prior to completing the delivery transaction, and may not first purchase the cannabis product from the retail dispensary, then obtain reimbursement from the cannabis consumer. No retail dispensary shall have more than 25 employees or the equivalent thereof, providing full-time paid delivery services to cannabis consumers per week under one license.
Jason, you want me to pick up, or how you feeling?
If you want to, feel free.
You know, I just
Or I
can't
can
help.
continue.
I just can't help myself.
Have at.
Also, Elise, you're welcome, but no pressure here.
Good. Catch me next Tuesday.
Yes, there we go. All recalls shall be conducted in accordance with section 125.8 of this title, unless the retail dispensary is otherwise directed by the office. Retail dispensary shall establish written policies and procedures to monitor, track, and resolve complaints, cannabis product returns, and quality assurance concerns. Pricing. A retail dispensary shall designate the price of each cannabis product or item sold by attaching to or otherwise displaying immediately adjacent to each such item displayed in the interior of the licensed premises where sales are made, a price tag, sign, or placard setting forth the price at which each such item is offered for sale therein. Pricing shall be included on any menu to cannabis consumers. The price of all cannabis products and items offered for sale on the internet to prospective cannabis consumers shall be available on any internet website or digital application of the retailer. And no retail dispensary shall refuse or fail to make product pricing available to cannabis consumers upon request, including quoting prices to prospective cannabis consumer by telephone or by means of communication. When the retail dispensary displays a cannabis product price, it should also display separately, but in a similar font and size, a manner to the price, the total cost of which the item, which includes all taxes that would be paid by the consumer on the cannabis product or item. Cannabinoid hemp products in adult use dispensary. Adult use retail dispensaries who sell cannabinoid hemp product to a consumer shall comply with the applicable requirements of Part 114 of this title, including obtaining a cannabinoid hemp retail license. Cannabinoid hemp flower products clearly labeled or advertised for the purpose of smoking or in the form of cigarette, cigar, or pre-roll, or package or combined with other items designated to facilitate smoking may be sold at a retail dispensary. That concludes all things retail. What do you say we hit pause on this before diving into micro business, etc.? Yeah, cool. All right, folks. Anyone have any questions that have popped up or kind of outstanding questions you have in mind? It's office hours time. We got a few minutes here, and if not, happy to hang up the Zoom and see you all again next week. I'm curious here, you know, when it comes to having smokable flower products going into a retail dispensary, you know, I guess I'd have to review the hemp regs part 114, but like, you know, the COA, does it include a full panel COA, et cetera? Can it be out of state as well as in-state product? So there's definitely some questions that come up on the tail end of that retail operations for me. All right, no big questions. Last call for questions. All right, great. Well, on behalf of CANY and Rochester Public Library, we thank everyone for their attendance and those organization support. Jason, Elise, always appreciate your professional perspectives. It's really just a unique offering to be able to have the space and walk through with you guys. So thank you so much. Everybody on the call, thank you so much for being here. Everyone in the recording, hope to see you next week. We are doing this Tuesday, Thursdays from noon to 1:15. And next week, we'll be diving into the world of micro businesses, and you do not want to miss that. really interesting license type. And in the meantime, yep, be safe, have a good weekend, and we'll see you all soon.